If you're a woman over 60, there's a good chance you've been unknowingly sabotaging your own happiness for decades. The patterns you developed to survive, to be loved, to be accepted, are now the very chains keeping you from experiencing the freedom, joy, and fulfillment you deserve. What worked for you at 20, 30, or even 50 is now quietly destroying the best years of your life. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal 6 devastating behaviors that are stealing your peace, your power, and your potential. These aren't obvious mistakes. They're deeply ingrained habits that society programmed into you, and they're so normalized that you probably don't even recognize them as problems. But here's the truth. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to breaking free. And breaking free after 60 isn't just possible, it's essential. Because the woman you're meant to become is waiting on the other side of these chains. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will change everything. Welcome to the Heart Code, where we unlock the secrets to emotional freedom and authentic living. I'm so glad you're here today, because this conversation is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about aging, happiness, and what it means to live fully as a woman over 60. Before we dive deep into this transformational content, I want to ask you for a small favor. If this video resonates with you, if you find value in what we're discussing, please hit that like button. It helps more women just like you discover these life-changing insights. And don't just watch and leave. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences, your struggles, your victories, they matter. They create a community of women supporting each other through these profound shifts. Share this video with other women in your life who need to hear this message. Together, we can break the cycles that have held us back for too long. And of course, subscribe to the Heart Code and turn on notifications so you never miss content designed specifically to help you reclaim your power and rewrite your story. If you really want to support this channel and help us create more transformational content for women like you, consider supporting us with super thanks. Your contribution directly enables us to keep producing the in-depth, honest conversations that mainstream media won't touch. Now, let's get into the heart of today's message. You're over 60. You've lived through decades of change, challenge, and transformation. You've raised families, built careers, navigated relationships, survived losses, and weathered storms that would have broken lesser souls. You've accumulated wisdom, experience, and a depth of understanding that only comes with time. And yet, despite all of this, there's a nagging feeling inside you, a quiet voice that whispers you're not living the life you truly want, that somehow, after all these years, you're still not free. You look around at your life and wonder why you don't feel the joy, the peace, the fulfillment that you thought would come with age. The truth is, you've been conditioned since childhood to behave in ways that served others, but diminished you. You learned to be accommodating, selfless, grateful for scraps, and quiet about your needs. These behaviors were survival mechanisms in a world that didn't value women's voices, desires, or autonomy. But what helped you survive decades ago is now suffocating the vibrant, authentic woman trying to emerge. The 6 behaviors I'm about to reveal are so common among women over 60 that they've become invisible. You don't see them as problems because everyone around you does them too. Society tells you these behaviors make you a good woman, a good mother, a good wife, a good friend, but they don't. They make you a prisoner of other people's expectations. And it's time to break free. Behavior 1. Apologizing for your existence. Let's start with something so pervasive among women over 60 that it's become a linguistic tic. You apologize constantly for everything, for things that aren't your fault, for things that aren't even problems, for simply existing in a space and having needs. You say sorry when someone bumps into you. You apologize before stating an opinion. You preface requests with apologies. You apologize for taking up time, for asking questions, for needing help, for speaking up, for not speaking up, for being too much or not enough. This compulsive apologizing isn't politeness. It's self-erasure. It's a deeply ingrained pattern that tells the world, and more importantly, tells yourself, that your presence is an inconvenience, your needs are a burden, and your existence requires justification. Think about the last 24 hours. How many times did you apologize? Now think about how many of those apologies were actually necessary. How many addressed genuine wrongdoing on your part? If you're honest, the answer is probably very few, if any. Most of your apologies are reflexive genuflections to a world that taught you that being female means being sorry. This pattern didn't start yesterday. It started in childhood when you were taught to be accommodating, to not make waves, to put others first. It was reinforced every time you were told you were too loud, too opinionated, too demanding, too emotional, too much. It was strengthened in relationships where your needs were secondary, in workplaces where assertiveness was labeled aggression, in social situations where you learned that smoothing things over was your job. Decades of conditioning created a woman who apologizes for breathing. The cost of this behavior is staggering. Every unnecessary apology diminishes you. It reinforces the belief that you don't deserve space, voice, or consideration. It tells everyone around you that they can disregard your boundaries, dismiss your needs, and expect you to accommodate them without reciprocation. It creates relationships built on inequality where you're always the one bending, flexing, and shrinking. But perhaps most devastatingly, it destroys your self-respect. You cannot respect yourself while constantly apologizing for existing. The two are fundamentally incompatible. Every time you say sorry when you haven't done anything wrong, you're telling yourself that you are wrong, your very being is wrong. And after 60 years of this messaging, is it any wonder you don't feel worthy of the life you want? Here's what this looks like in daily life. You apologize to the doctor for taking up their time with your symptoms. You apologize to your adult children for needing their attention. You apologize to friends for sharing your problems. You apologize to service workers for asking them to do their jobs. You apologize in stores, in restaurants, in your own home. You apologize to your partner for having preferences about how you spend your time. You even apologize to yourself for not being better, faster, younger, different. Each apology is a small act of self-betrayal, and they accumulate year after year, apology after apology, until you've created a life where you're a ghost in your own story, always sorry for casting a shadow. The psychology behind this pattern runs deep. Women of your generation were raised in an era when female assertiveness was pathologized. You were taught that good women are accommodating, that harmony is your responsibility, that conflict is to be avoided at all costs. You learned that your value came from how well you served others, how little trouble you caused, how seamlessly you blended into the background when not needed. These weren't just suggestions. They were survival strategies in a world where women's economic and social survival depended on male approval. A woman who demanded too much, who took up too much space, who refused to apologize for her existence, risked rejection, abandonment, poverty, and social ostracism. So you learned to be small, to be sorry, to preemptively apologize for any potential disruption your humanity might cause. And these patterns became so automatic that even now, in a world that has changed, even now when you have the freedom to be different, you cannot stop. The neural pathways are too deeply carved. The conditioning is too complete. But here's what you need to understand. This pattern is not you. It's what was done to you. And what was learned can be unlearned. The first step is awareness. Start noticing every time you apologize. Don't judge yourself for it. Just notice. Notice the situations that trigger the apology reflex. Notice what you're really apologizing for. Are you sorry for doing something harmful? Or are you sorry for being human? Are you addressing legitimate wrongdoing? Or are you preemptively shrinking yourself to make others comfortable? This awareness is crucial because you cannot change what you don't see. Once you start seeing the pattern, you can begin interrupting it. This doesn't mean never apologizing. Genuine apologies for genuine mistakes are healthy and necessary, but you must learn to distinguish between appropriate apologies and reflexive self-erasure. When you catch yourself about to apologize, pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually sorry for? Did I violate someone's boundary or harm them in some way? Or am I just existing, having needs, taking up space, being human? If it's the latter, don't apologize. Replace the apology with a statement of fact or a simple request. Instead of, I'm sorry to bother you, but could you help me? Try, I need help with something. Could you assist me? Instead of, sorry for complaining, try, I need to share something that's bothering me. Instead of, I'm sorry I'm not better at this, try, I'm learning this and it's challenging. Do you hear the difference? One version erases you. The other acknowledges your humanity without shame. This shift feels enormous at first. You'll feel exposed, demanding, selfish. That's the conditioning talking. Push through it. You have every right to exist without apology. You have every right to have needs, to ask for help, to take up space, to speak, to be imperfect, to be human. These rights don't require justification. They don't require apologies. They simply are. And the more you practice claiming them without apologizing, the more natural it becomes. Your brain starts creating new pathways. Your sense of self starts expanding. You begin to remember what it feels like to stand in your full humanity without shame. The people in your life will react to this change. Some will be uncomfortable. They've grown accustomed to your compulsive apologizing. It made you easy to dismiss, easy to dominate, easy to take for granted. When you stop apologizing for existing, they have to actually reckon with your humanity. They have to treat you as an equal rather than a subordinate. Some will rise to this challenge and your relationships will deepen. Others will resist, will try to make you feel guilty for changing, will tell you you've become difficult or selfish. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your freedom is. This is where you must be strong. The pull to revert to old patterns will be intense. 60+ years of conditioning doesn't disappear overnight. You'll have moments where you slip back into apologizing for everything. You'll have days where the old programming feels overwhelming and you just want to make everyone comfortable again, even at the cost of your own diminishment. In those moments, remember why you're doing this. You're doing this because you deserve to live the remaining years, decades of your life as a full human being, not as an apology. You're doing this because women who come after you need to see that it's possible to reclaim yourself at any age. You're doing this because the alternative, continuing to shrink and apologize and erase yourself until you disappear entirely, is unbearable. Choose yourself. Stop apologizing for existing. You are not an inconvenience. You are not a burden. You are not too much. You are a human being with inherent worth, and that worth does not require apologies. Stand in that truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when people push back, even when your own conditioning screams at you to shrink back down. This is your life. Stop saying sorry for living it. Behavior 2. Prioritizing everyone's comfort over your own truth. The second pattern keeping you trapped is your compulsive need to keep everyone comfortable, even when it requires you to betray yourself. You've become a master of reading rooms, managing emotions, smoothing over conflicts, and saying what people want to hear rather than what you actually think and feel. You've learned to be a chameleon, shifting your opinions, your preferences, your very personality to match whatever will create the least friction. You don't even do this consciously anymore. It's become so automatic that you're not sure you even know what your real opinions are on many things. You've spent so long shaping yourself to fit other people's expectations that you've lost touch with your authentic self. This behavior shows up everywhere in your life. In conversations, you agree with people even when you disagree. You laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You express enthusiasm for activities you have no interest in. You pretend to like people you actually can't stand. You go along with plans that don't serve you. You stay quiet when you want to speak. You smile when you want to scream. You nod when you want to shake your head. You accommodate when you want to refuse. This constant performance is exhausting. You're working harder in every interaction than anyone else in the room because you're managing everyone's emotional experience while suppressing your own. And for what? For the illusion of harmony, for the temporary comfort of avoiding conflict, for the fleeting approval of people who don't actually know the real you because you've never shown them. Let's be clear about what this pattern really is. It's not kindness. It's not empathy. It's not emotional intelligence. Those are the stories you tell yourself to justify it, but they're lies. Real kindness doesn't require self-betrayal. Real empathy holds space for everyone's feelings, including your own. Real emotional intelligence involves expressing your truth skillfully, not hiding it entirely. What you're actually doing is fawning. It's a trauma response. You're constantly scanning your environment for threats to harmony and preemptively neutralizing them by making yourself smaller, more agreeable, more palatable. You learned this response early, probably in childhood, in an environment where your authentic expression was met with rejection, anger, withdrawal, or punishment. You learned that being yourself was dangerous, that speaking your truth led to conflict, that having needs created problems, so you learned to manage everyone else's experience to keep yourself safe. And it worked for a time. It helped you navigate difficult family dynamics, survive bad relationships, succeed in workplaces that punished female authenticity. But the cost is your soul. You've spent decades being whoever everyone else needed you to be, and now you don't know who you actually are. This pattern is particularly insidious because it disguises itself as virtue. You tell yourself you're being considerate, sensitive, mature. You tell yourself that prioritizing harmony is noble, that accommodation is a strength, that flexibility is a gift. And there's some truth in these things. The ability to consider others, to compromise, to adapt, these are valuable skills. But you've taken them to a pathological extreme. You've crossed the line from healthy consideration into compulsive people-pleasing. And there's a crucial difference. Healthy consideration involves balancing your needs with others' needs. It's reciprocal. It's boundaried. It doesn't require you to disappear. Compulsive people-pleasing erases your needs entirely. It's one-directional. It's boundaryless. It requires you to become a non-person, a mirror reflecting back whatever people want to see. This is not a virtue. It's a prison. And at 60 plus, you're running out of time to escape it. Here's what happens when you live this way for decades. You become invisible. People know the version of you that you perform for them, but they don't know you. How could they? You don't show them. Every relationship in your life is built on a false foundation because you're not bringing your authentic self to it. You're bringing a carefully curated performance designed to keep them comfortable. And because these relationships aren't based on truth, they can't nourish you. They can't fulfill you. They can't meet your real needs because no one knows what your real needs are. You've never told them. Worse, you start to resent the very people you're trying to please. On the surface, you're agreeable, accommodating, always saying yes. But underneath, resentment builds. You're angry that no one considers your needs, but you've never expressed your needs. You're frustrated that people take you for granted, but you've taught them that's acceptable by never setting boundaries. You're hurt that no one really knows you, but you've never shown them who you are. This resentment poisons you. It leaks out in passive-aggressive comments, in martyrdom, in subtle sabotage. You become the woman who says everything is fine when nothing is fine, who agrees to plans and then quietly seethes through them, who smiles on the outside while dying on the inside. This is no way to live, and it's absolutely no way to spend your 60s and beyond, the years when you should finally be free to be fully yourself. Let's talk about what this pattern costs you in practical terms. It costs you your voice. When you never speak your truth, your voice literally atrophies. You forget how to articulate what you think and feel. You become uncertain, hesitant, unable to express yourself clearly because you're so out of practice. It costs you your preferences. When you always defer to others, you lose touch with what you actually like, want, and value. Ask yourself right now, what's your favorite restaurant, your favorite activity, your ideal way to spend a Saturday? If you struggle to answer these questions, it's because you've spent so long adapting to everyone else's preferences that you've forgotten your own. It costs you your time. Every yes to someone else is a no to yourself. Every activity you engage in to please others is time stolen from what actually feeds your soul. And at 60 plus, time is your most precious resource. You don't have decades to waste on activities and relationships that don't nourish you. It costs you your energy, the constant performance, the emotional management, the suppression of your authentic self. All of this requires enormous energy, and that energy is finite. You're spending it on maintaining an illusion of harmony instead of building a life that actually makes you happy. Most importantly, it costs you yourself. When you betray your truth often enough, long enough, you lose the ability to access it. You become disconnected from your own inner wisdom, your own knowing, your own soul. You become a stranger to yourself. And that's the greatest tragedy of all. Because the you that's been buried under decades of people-pleasing is extraordinary. She's wise, powerful, authentic, and free. But she's suffocating under the weight of everyone else's comfort. Here's how to start breaking this pattern. First, you must reconnect with your truth. This requires quieting the voices of everyone else and listening to yourself. Start small. Pay attention to your physical responses. Your body knows your truth even when your mind has forgotten it. Notice when your stomach tightens, when your shoulders hunch, when your jaw clenches. These are signals that something is wrong, that you're betraying yourself. Notice when you feel expansive, relaxed, energized. These are signals that you're aligned with your truth. Start asking yourself questions and answering them honestly, just for yourself. What do I actually want right now? How do I really feel about this? What would I do if I only had to please myself? What am I pretending not to know? At first, the answers might not come easily. You've been ignoring these questions for so long that the connection is weak, but keep asking. The answers will come, and when they do, start speaking them, not aggressively, not combatively, but clearly and firmly. Start with low-stakes situations. Express a preference about what to eat. State an opinion about a movie. Say no to an invitation that doesn't interest you. These small acts of authenticity build your truth-speaking muscle. As you practice, move to higher-stakes situations. Tell your adult children what you really think about their choices, with love but with honesty. Express to your partner how you actually feel about the state of your relationship. Set boundaries with friends who drain you. Speak up in social situations when you disagree. Each time you speak your truth, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You teach people who you actually are. You build relationships based on reality rather than performance. And yes, some people will be uncomfortable. Some will be shocked. Some will be angry. They've benefited from your self-betrayal. They've had a version of you who always agreed, always accommodated, always prioritized their comfort. They don't want to lose that. Let them be uncomfortable. Their discomfort is not more important than your freedom. Their preference for the false you doesn't override your right to be the real you. Some relationships will end when you stop people-pleasing. That's okay. Those relationships were built on your self-betrayal. They weren't serving you. They were using you. Losing them makes space for relationships built on truth, reciprocity, and genuine connection. Other relationships will deepen. The people who truly care about you will welcome your authenticity. They'll appreciate finally knowing the real you. They'll rise to meet you in this new, honest space. These are the relationships worth keeping. Here's what you need to understand at a deep level. You are not responsible for everyone's emotional experience. You are not required to manage other people's feelings. You are not obligated to make everyone comfortable at the cost of your own well-being. These beliefs are lies you've been taught. They're tools of control that keep women compliant and self-sacrificing. The truth is, each person is responsible for their own emotional experience. If someone is uncomfortable with your truth, that's their work to do, not yours. If someone can't handle you having boundaries, that's their limitation, not your failure. If someone needs you to be false in order to feel comfortable, they don't actually care about you. They care about what you do for them, and you deserve better than that. You deserve relationships where you can be fully yourself, where your truth is welcomed, where your needs matter as much as anyone else's. But you'll never have those relationships if you don't start speaking your truth. So start today, right now. In the next interaction you have, tell the truth. Express what you actually think and feel. Watch what happens. Most of the time, the consequences you fear won't materialize. Most people can handle your truth just fine. And even when there is pushback, you'll survive it. You'll discover that you're strong enough to withstand other people's discomfort. You'll learn that your truth is more important than their comfort. And slowly, conversation by conversation, truth by truth, you'll rebuild your life on a foundation of authenticity. Stop betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. Your truth is not a weapon. It's not an attack. It's simply who you are, and who you are deserves to be seen, heard, and honored. Starting with you, behavior 3, accepting crumbs and calling it abundance. The third devastating pattern is your willingness to accept minimal effort, minimal consideration, minimal love, and convince yourself it's enough. You've learned to be grateful for scraps, to lower your standards so far that any small gesture feels like a gift, to celebrate people showing up with the bare minimum and act like they've moved mountains. This pattern shows up most painfully in your relationships, but it permeates every area of your life. You accept friendships where you do all the calling, all the initiating, all the emotional labor. You accept family relationships where you give constantly and receive rarely. You accept romantic partnerships where you're an afterthought, where your needs are ignored, where effort is one-sided. And you tell yourself you're lucky to have even this. You tell yourself you shouldn't expect more. You tell yourself that wanting more is selfish, demanding, ungrateful. These are lies. Lies that keep you trapped in relationships and situations that starve your soul. Let me be direct with you. You have been conditioned to accept crumbs. From childhood, you learned that your needs were secondary, that wanting too much made you difficult, that the way to be loved was to need very little and appreciate everything, no matter how inadequate. You learned to celebrate men who did the bare minimum of parenting their own children, to be grateful for partners who occasionally noticed you, to appreciate friends who remembered your birthday, to praise family members who showed up once in a while. You learned to set your expectations so low that anything above complete neglect felt like abundance. This conditioning was deliberate. A woman who expects nothing is easy to exploit. A woman who celebrates crumbs will never demand a feast. A woman who believes she should be grateful for minimal effort will tolerate being undervalued indefinitely. And you have. For decades, you've tolerated relationships where you give 70% and get 30% back. And you've convinced yourself that's balanced. You've tolerated being taken for granted, being deprioritized, being treated as optional. And you've smiled through it because you were taught that complaint is unattractive, that demands push people away, that gratitude for anything is virtue. But gratitude for mistreatment is not virtue, it's self-abandonment. Let's look at what this actually looks like in your life right now. Think about your relationships. How many of them are truly reciprocal? How many involve people who invest in you as much as you invest in them? How many relationships exist because you maintain them and would disappear if you stopped doing all the work? If you're honest, the numbers are probably devastating. You have adult children who call only when they need something, who cancel plans with you repeatedly, who forget important dates in your life, who can't be bothered to spend quality time with you unless it's convenient for them. And you make excuses for them. They're busy. They have their own lives. You shouldn't expect so much. But would you treat them this way? Would you repeatedly cancel on them, forget their milestones, only reach out when you needed something? Of course not. So why do you accept it from them? You have friends who never initiate contact, who dump their problems on you but disappear when you need support, who take and take and take and give nothing back. And you keep showing up for them because you tell yourself that's what friends do. But friendship is mutual. One-sided relationships aren't friendships. They're you being used. You have or have had romantic partners who didn't prioritize you, who didn't put effort into the relationship, who expected you to be grateful for their mere presence while they invested nothing. And you stayed, or you stayed too long, because you believed you couldn't expect more. You believed that at your age, with your history, you should be thankful anyone wanted you at all. This is heartbreaking, and it's everywhere in your life, not just in relationships. You accept being overlooked at work, being paid less, being given less opportunity, and you tell yourself you should be grateful to have a job at all. You accept substandard service from professionals, from businesses, from institutions, and you don't complain because you don't want to be difficult. You accept living spaces, clothing, possessions that don't serve you or bring you joy because you tell yourself you don't need better, that wanting better is materialistic or vain. In every area of your life, you've learned to accept less than you deserve and reframe it as enough. The psychological mechanism at work here is a survival strategy. When you can't leave a situation, when you feel powerless to change your circumstances, the human mind protects itself by adjusting expectations downward. If you convince yourself you don't need more, don't deserve more, then not getting more doesn't hurt as much. This worked when you were young, when you actually were more powerless, when economic and social realities limited your options. But you're not powerless anymore. You have options now that you didn't have at 20, 30, 40. Yet you're still operating from that old survival mindset, still protecting yourself from disappointment by expecting nothing, still convincing yourself that crumbs are a feast. Here's what you must understand. You deserve reciprocity. You deserve effort. You deserve to be prioritized, valued, and cherished. Not because you've earned it, not because you're perfect, but simply because you're a human being. That's the only qualification required. You don't need to be younger, prettier, thinner, more accomplished, more agreeable, more anything. You deserve genuine love and consideration right now, exactly as you are, and anyone who can't or won't provide that doesn't belong in your life. This is not selfish. This is not demanding. This is basic self-respect. And if the people in your life have convinced you that expecting basic respect is too much, then they've been manipulating you. Because the truth is, people will treat you exactly as poorly as you allow them to. When you accept crumbs, you teach people that crumbs are sufficient. When you celebrate minimal effort, you teach people that minimal effort is all you require. When you make excuses for poor treatment, you give people permission to continue treating you poorly. You train people how to treat you, and you've trained everyone in your life that you don't require much, that you'll tolerate being an afterthought, that you'll accept one-sided relationships, that you'll be grateful for whatever scraps they toss your way, and they've learned the lesson well. But here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. You can change this. Right now, today. You can decide that you're done accepting crumbs. You can raise your standards. You can require reciprocity, effort, genuine care. You can stop making excuses for people who don't show up for you. You can stop celebrating the bare minimum. You can start expecting more, and when people don't meet those expectations, you can let them go. This is where it gets hard, because raising your standards means risking loss. It means that relationships that don't meet the new standard will end. People who have benefited from your low expectations will push back, will try to make you feel guilty, will accuse you of changing, of being unreasonable, of asking too much. And some relationships will not survive this shift. That's not a failure, that's a clearing. You're making space in your life for relationships that actually nourish you. You're removing relationships that drain you. This is essential work. Here's how to start. First, get clear on what you actually deserve and want in relationships. Not what you think you can get, not what seems realistic, but what you actually want. What would a truly reciprocal relationship look like? What would it feel like to be genuinely prioritized? What kind of effort and consideration would feed your soul? Write it down. Be specific. This is your new standard. Second, look at your current relationships against this standard. Who meets it? Who comes close? Who doesn't even try? Be ruthlessly honest. Don't make excuses for people. Don't lower the standard to make people fit. Just assess objectively where each relationship stands. Third, communicate your new expectations. This is crucial. You can't expect people to change if they don't know what you need. Have direct, clear conversations. Tell people what you need from the relationship to continue. Tell them what reciprocity looks like. Tell them what behaviors are no longer acceptable. Be calm, be clear, be firm. Fourth, follow through. This is where most women fail. They set boundaries, communicate expectations, and then don't enforce them. When someone violates the boundary or fails to meet the expectation, they make excuses and accept it anyway. Don't do this. If you say a behavior is unacceptable, it must actually be unacceptable. If someone crosses a boundary, there must be a consequence. That consequence might be reducing contact, ending the relationship, or creating distance. Whatever it is, you must follow through. Your boundaries mean nothing if you don't enforce them. Fifth, be prepared for loss. Some people will rise to meet your new standards. They'll appreciate the clarity. They'll step up. These relationships will deepen and become more genuine, but others won't. They'll resist. They'll make you feel guilty. They'll tell you you've changed, and not in a good way. They'll choose to leave rather than put in more effort. Let them. These people were in your life because you were easy, not because they valued you. Losing them makes space for people who will actually show up for you. This process is painful. There's grief in releasing relationships, even ones that weren't serving you. There's fear in raising standards, because what if no one meets them? What if you end up alone? These fears are real, but they're based on a false premise. The premise is that being in unfulfilling relationships is better than being alone. It's not. Being alone is infinitely better than being surrounded by people who undervalue you. Being alone allows you to hear yourself, to know yourself, to build a life that actually reflects your values. Being in crumb relationships keeps you distracted, depleted, and disconnected from yourself. But here's the reality. When you raise your standards, you usually don't end up alone. You end up with fewer but far more genuine connections. You end up with people who actually see you, who invest in you, who show up for you. Quality over quantity. A few real relationships nourish you more than dozens of superficial ones. And crucially, when you stop accepting crumbs, you become available for the feast. As long as you're filling your life with people and situations that give you 30%, you don't have space for the people and situations that would give you 100%. You're not available for genuine love because you're too busy managing relationships with people who barely care. Stop settling. Stop accepting crumbs. Stop being grateful for the bare minimum. Stop celebrating people for doing what they should be doing anyway. Stop making excuses for poor treatment. Stop lowering your standards to make others comfortable. You deserve more. You've always deserved more. And if the people in your life can't or won't give you more, then they don't deserve access to you. This isn't about being demanding or difficult. It's about basic self-respect. It's about recognizing your worth. It's about refusing to betray yourself by accepting treatment you would never accept for someone you loved. You wouldn't want your daughter to accept crumbs. You wouldn't want your best friend to settle for one-sided relationships. So why do you accept it for yourself? Stop. Right now, today, raise your standards. Require reciprocity. Expect effort. Demand to be valued, and watch how your life transforms when you finally start treating yourself like you matter. Because you do. You always have. It's time you started believing it. Behavior 4. Staying small to make others feel big. The fourth pattern destroying your life is your compulsive need to diminish yourself to make others feel important. You've learned to hide your intelligence, downplay your accomplishments, minimize your strengths, and suppress your talents so that other people don't feel threatened or inadequate. You've become an expert at making yourself small, and you do this so automatically that you probably don't even notice it anymore. It's second nature to deflect compliments, to attribute your successes to luck or other people, to present yourself as less capable than you are. This pattern runs deep in women of your generation. You were taught that female brilliance is threatening, that successful women are intimidating, that intelligence in a woman makes men uncomfortable, that ambition is unfeminine, that confidence is arrogance, that taking credit for your achievements is boastful. So you learn to hide, to shrink, to play dumb, to make yourself small, non-threatening, safe for the fragile egos around you. Let's look at how this shows up in your daily life. In conversations, you pretend not to know things you actually know. Someone mentions a topic you're well-versed in, and instead of contributing your expertise, you stay quiet or ask basic questions to let them feel knowledgeable. Someone makes a factual error and you don't correct them because you don't want to embarrass them or come across as a know-it-all. You have insights and perspectives that could enrich the conversation, but you hold back because you don't want to dominate, don't want to seem like you think you're smarter than everyone else. When you do achieve something, you immediately minimize it. You got a promotion? It was just luck, right place, right time. You created something beautiful? Oh, it's nothing special. You solved a problem? Anyone could have done it. You learned a new skill? It's not that hard. You're constantly downplaying your accomplishments, deflecting praise, and refusing to own your successes. Why? Because you've been taught that acknowledging your own excellence is unattractive, that celebrating yourself is narcissistic, that true humility requires self-deprecation. These are lies. Humility is not self-diminishment. Humility is accurate self-assessment without ego or false modesty. True humility allows you to see both your strengths and limitations clearly. What you're practicing isn't humility, it's self-erasure disguised as virtue. This pattern is particularly insidious in relationships with men. Many women of your generation were explicitly taught to play dumb around men, to let men feel smarter, more capable, more important. You were told that men's egos are fragile and that a smart woman threatens masculinity, so you learned to bite your tongue, to ask for help with things you could easily do yourself, to present yourself as less competent than you are. You learned to laugh at jokes that weren't funny, to act impressed by knowledge you already possessed, to make men feel like the expert, the authority, the capable one, even when you knew more than they did. And this didn't just apply to romantic relationships. It applied to professional settings, social situations, family dynamics. Everywhere you went, you calculated how much intelligence was safe to display without threatening the men around you. And then you displayed just under that amount. The cost of this behavior is staggering. You've spent your entire life performing incompetence. You've hidden your light. You've buried your talents. You've denied your own brilliance, not because you actually lacked it, but because displaying it was socially punished. Think about what you could have accomplished if you hadn't been performing smallness for 60+ years. Think about the opportunities you didn't pursue because you didn't want to seem too ambitious. Think about the ideas you didn't voice because you didn't want to overshadow others. Think about the leadership positions you didn't seek because you didn't want to appear domineering. Think about all the times you held yourself back, made yourself smaller, dimmed your light, not because you lacked ability, but because you were protecting others from their own insecurity. This is a tragedy, not just for you, but for the world. The world has been deprived of your full contribution. Solutions you could have provided went unspoken. Leadership you could have offered went unexpressed. Wisdom you could have shared stayed hidden, all because you were taught that your brilliance was a problem rather than a gift. And the saddest part is, you policed yourself. No one had to silence you. You silenced yourself. You internalized the message that you should be small, and then you became the enforcer of your own diminishment. You didn't need external pressure anymore. The cage was inside you. Here's what you need to understand. The people who need you to be small to feel big are not worth protecting. If someone's sense of importance requires your diminishment, they're not secure, they're not healthy, they're not someone you need in your life. Truly confident people are not threatened by your excellence. They celebrate it. They're inspired by it. They want to see you shine. Only the insecure require you to dim your light, so theirs can seem brighter by comparison. And their insecurity is not your responsibility to manage. You are not responsible for protecting fragile egos. You are not required to perform incompetence so others can feel competent. You are not obligated to hide your intelligence, talents, or achievements to make others comfortable. These expectations are tools of oppression, and you've been complicit in your own oppression by accepting them. It's time to stop. It's time to own your brilliance. It's time to take up space. It's time to let yourself be as smart, capable, accomplished, and powerful as you actually are. And if that threatens people, so be it. Let them be threatened. Their reaction is about their limitations, not yours. Here's how to start breaking this pattern. First, stop downplaying your accomplishments. When someone compliments you, say, "Thank you." Just thank you. Not, "Oh, it was nothing," or "I just got lucky," or "Anyone could have done it." Just thank you. Own it. The accomplishment was real. The compliment was deserved. Receive it. Second, stop pretending not to know things. When you have expertise, share it. When you have an insight, voice it. When someone makes an error and you know the correct information, offer it. You don't have to be arrogant or condescending. You can share knowledge kindly, but share it. Stop hiding what you know. Third, stop performing incompetence. If you can do something, do it. Don't pretend you can't to make someone else feel needed or important. Don't ask for help with things you can handle yourself. just to stroke someone's ego. Be honest about your capabilities. Fourth, start taking credit for your work, your ideas, your achievements. When you've done something well, acknowledge it. When you've had an idea, claim it. When you've achieved something, celebrate it. You don't need to be obnoxious about it, but you must stop attributing your successes to everyone and everything except yourself. Fifth, stop shrinking in conversations. Speak up, share your thoughts, contribute your perspective, take up space. The conversation is not more valuable when you're silent. Your voice matters. Your perspective is unique. The discussion is enriched by your participation, not diminished by it. As you start making these shifts, you will encounter resistance. People who have benefited from your smallness will not like it when you expand. They'll accuse you of being arrogant, boastful, difficult, trying to show off. They'll tell you you've changed, and not for the better. Let them. Their discomfort is proof you're doing something right. You're disrupting a dynamic that served them at your expense. Of course, they're uncomfortable, but their comfort is not more important than your authenticity. Some people will appreciate your expansion. They'll love seeing you step into your full power. They'll encourage it. They'll celebrate it. Keep these people close. They see your value. They want you to shine. They're secure enough to handle your brilliance. These are your people. The others, the ones who need you small, can go. You don't need them. You never did. You've been accommodating their insecurity at the cost of your own fulfillment. That exchange is over. Here's a hard truth you need to hear. You've been complicit in your own diminishment. No one is forcing you to stay small anymore. The explicit social pressures of your youth are largely gone. Yet you continue shrinking. Why? Because the programming runs so deep that even when the external pressure disappears, the internal pressure remains. You've internalized the voices that told you to be small, and now you enforce your own limitations. This is where the real work begins. You must identify and challenge every internal message that tells you to shrink. When you're about to downplay an accomplishment, stop. Notice the impulse. Ask yourself, who benefits from me minimizing this? When you're about to hide your knowledge, stop. Notice the impulse. Ask yourself, who am I protecting by staying silent? When you're about to perform incompetence, stop. Notice the impulse. Ask yourself, why do I think being capable is a problem? These questions disrupt the automatic pattern. They bring consciousness to behavior that's been unconscious. And consciousness is the first step to change. You'll discover that most of the time, the only person who benefits from your smallness is your own fear. You're not actually protecting others. You're protecting yourself from potential rejection, judgment, envy. You're staying small to stay safe. But you're not safe when you're small. You're just hidden. And hidden is not the same as safe. Hidden is invisible. Hidden is voiceless. Hidden is powerless. You didn't survive 60+ years to spend your remaining time hidden. You survived to finally step into your full radiance. And that means being big, taking up space, owning your intelligence, your talents, your accomplishments, letting yourself be seen in your full brilliance. This is your birthright. You were not born to be small. You were born to be magnificent, and every day you spend performing smallness is a day stolen from your magnificent life. Stop stealing from yourself. Stop diminishing yourself. Stop hiding your light. The world needs what you have to offer. The world needs your intelligence, your wisdom, your unique gifts. But the world can't receive what you won't show. So show up, fully, powerfully, brilliantly. And if that's too much for some people, they can leave. Because you're done making yourself small for anyone. You're done protecting fragile egos. You're done performing incompetence. You're done hiding your light. You're stepping into your full power, finally, and it's going to be extraordinary. Behavior 5. staying in situations because you've already invested so much. The fifth pattern keeping you trapped is the sunk cost fallacy. You're staying in situations, relationships, and circumstances that no longer serve you, that actively harm you, simply because you've already invested so much time, energy, money, or effort. You tell yourself you can't leave because you've already given so much. You've already put in so many years. You've already sacrificed so much. To leave now would mean all that investment was wasted. So you stay, even though staying is destroying you. This is one of the most devastating patterns because it keeps you chained to your past instead of free for your future. Let's be clear about what this actually looks like in your life. You're in a marriage that stopped being fulfilling decades ago. Maybe it's not abusive, not dramatic, just dead. There's no intimacy, no connection, no joy. You're roommates at best, adversaries at worst. But you don't leave. You've been married for 30, 40, 50 years. How can you leave now? All those years would be wasted. All that sacrifice would be for nothing. Better to stay and make it work, or at least endure it, than to admit the investment didn't pay off. You're in friendships that drain you, people who take and never give back. People who don't actually like you that much, but keep you around because you're useful. People who make you feel bad about yourself. But you don't end these friendships because you've been friends for so long. You have so much history. You've invested so much in these relationships. To walk away now feels like betrayal, like failure, like waste. You're in a career or job that doesn't fulfill you. Maybe it never did, or maybe it did once, but doesn't anymore. You're bored, underutilized, undervalued. You dread going to work. You count the hours until you can leave. But you don't quit, don't change careers, don't pursue what actually excites you. You've invested so many years building this career, developing these skills, climbing this ladder. To start over now, especially at your age, feels impossible, irresponsible, like throwing away everything you've worked for. You're living in a place that doesn't feel like home. Maybe you never liked it, or maybe you outgrew it. Maybe it's too big, too small, too isolated, too expensive, too far from what matters to you. But you don't move. You've lived here for so long. You've put so much work into the house. You've built a life here, even if it's not the life you want. Moving now feels overwhelming, wasteful, foolish. So you stay, year after year, in a place that doesn't nourish your soul. Do you see the pattern? In every case, you're letting past investment dictate future choices. You're making decisions based on what you've already given rather than what you want going forward. You're treating sunk costs as if they're still relevant, as if they should influence your choices now. This is a logical fallacy, and it's destroying your life. Here's the truth about sunk costs. They're sunk. The time, energy, money, effort you've already invested is gone. You can't get it back. It's in the past. It's irrelevant to what you should do now. The only relevant question is, does this situation serve me going forward? Does this relationship nourish me now? Does this career fulfill me today? Does this living situation support the life I want to live? If the answer is no, then you need to leave. Period. What you've already invested doesn't matter. What matters is what continuing to invest will cost you. Every day you stay in a situation that doesn't serve you is another day of your life wasted. Every week, every month, every year. These are days you don't get back. This is time you could spend building a life that actually makes you happy. But you're not. You're protecting the investment you made in the past at the cost of your future. This is particularly tragic at your age because time is your most precious, most limited resource. You don't have infinite years ahead of you. Every year you waste staying in a dead marriage, draining friendship, unfulfilling career, unsuitable living situation is a year you don't get to spend in circumstances that actually make you happy. The cost of staying compounds with every passing year. Let's talk about why you do this. Part of it is straightforward loss aversion. Humans hate to lose, we hate to waste, we hate to admit that an investment didn't pay off. It feels like failure, like we made a mistake, like we wasted precious years of our life on something that didn't work out. These feelings are so uncomfortable that we'll do almost anything to avoid them, including staying in situations that actively harm us. But there's something deeper at work here. For women of your generation, there's also a moral component. You were taught that commitment is virtue, that sticking it out is noble, that leaving is failure, selfishness, weakness. You were taught that good women don't give up. They don't walk away. They don't prioritize their own happiness over their commitments. They endure, they sacrifice, they make it work. These messages are deeply embedded in your psyche, and they make the sunk cost fallacy even more powerful because now it's not just about loss aversion. It's about your identity as a good woman. Leaving feels like moral failure, like betraying your values, like proving you're not who you thought you were. So you stay, not just because you've invested so much, but because leaving would mean admitting you're the kind of woman who gives up, who puts herself first, who walks away when things get hard. And you've spent your entire life trying not to be that woman. But here's what you need to understand. Staying in situations that harm you is not commitment. It's not virtue. It's not strength. It's fear. It's sunk cost fallacy. It's sacrificing your future to protect your past. Real commitment is to your own well-being, your own growth, your own life. Real virtue is honoring yourself enough to leave what doesn't serve you. Real strength is admitting when something isn't working and having the courage to walk away. Let's address the specific contexts where this pattern shows up most devastatingly. First, marriages and romantic relationships. So many women of your generation stay in marriages that are dead or dying because divorce at your age feels impossible. You've been married for decades, you've built a life together, you've raised children together, you have shared history, shared finances, shared everything. How can you possibly leave now? What would people think? What would your children think? How would you manage financially? Where would you live? Wouldn't you be alone? These questions are real and valid, but they're not reasons to stay in a relationship that's killing your spirit. Yes, divorce at your age is complicated, but so is staying married to someone you don't love, don't like, maybe can't even stand. The complexity of leaving doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. The problems in the marriage don't get better just because you've already invested decades. If anything, they get worse. And every year you stay is another year of your one precious life spent in a relationship that doesn't bring you joy. You deserve joy. You deserve love. You deserve partnership that actually feels like partnership. And if your marriage doesn't provide that, then the years you've already invested are not a reason to keep investing. They're irrelevant. What matters is whether the marriage serves you now and going forward. If it doesn't, leave. Start over. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's complicated, but it's possible. And on the other side is freedom. The chance to spend your remaining years in joy instead of endurance. Second, friendships. You have friendships that are decades old but completely one-sided. You do all the calling, all the showing up, all the emotional labor. These friends take and never give back. But you don't end these friendships because you have so much history together. You've been friends since high school, college, when your kids were young. How can you walk away from that? Here's how. You recognize that history is not the same as present value. Yes, you've been friends for a long time, but that doesn't mean the friendship is healthy now. That doesn't mean it nourishes you now. Long history doesn't obligate you to continue a relationship that harms you. It doesn't matter how long you've been friends. What matters is whether the friendship adds value to your life today. If it doesn't, if it drains you, if it's one-sided, if you feel worse after interacting with this person, then end it. Let it go. The years you've already invested don't require you to keep investing. They're gone. Focus on what serves you now. Third, careers. This one is particularly painful because careers represent huge investments of time, energy, education, identity. You've spent decades building your career, and now at 60 plus, you're realizing it doesn't fulfill you. Maybe it never did, or maybe it did once but doesn't anymore. You want to do something different, something meaningful, something that excites you, but you don't pursue it because you've invested so much in your current career. You have seniority, stability, a good salary. To walk away now and start over feels insane. You'd be starting from the bottom in a new field. You'd be the inexperienced one. You'd probably make less money. It feels like throwing away everything you've built. But what are you actually building by staying? Another year of boredom, another year of feeling unfulfilled, another year knowing you're capable of more, of different, but you're not doing it because you're too invested in the safe path? That's not building anything. That's treading water. And at your age, you don't have time to tread water. If you want to do something different, do it. Now, the career you've already built is not wasted if you leave it. It gave you skills, experience, financial stability. It served its purpose. Now it's time for something else. Don't let past investment trap you in present misery. Fourth, living situations. You're living somewhere you don't want to live. Maybe it's the family home that's too big now that the kids are gone. Maybe it's a city you never liked. Maybe it's a climate that doesn't agree with you. Maybe it's too far from the people and places you love. But you don't move because you've lived there for so long. You've put so much work into the house. You have so many memories there. Moving feels like abandonment, like erasing history, like waste. But a house is just a structure. A location is just a place. Neither is more important than your happiness and well-being. If where you're living doesn't serve you, move. Sell the house. Relocate. Start fresh somewhere that actually feels like home. The memories you have don't disappear when you move. They're inside you. And you'll make new memories in a place that actually nourishes you instead of draining you. Here's how to break the sunk cost pattern. First, recognize it. Start noticing when you're making decisions based on past investment rather than present value. Notice when you're justifying staying in a situation by referencing how long you've been in it or how much you've already given. That's the sunk cost fallacy at work. Second, reframe how you think about investment. The time, energy, money you've already invested is not wasted if you leave. It served its purpose at the time. It gave you what it gave you, but that doesn't obligate you to continue indefinitely. You can honor what was without being trapped by it. Third, focus on the future, not the past. When making decisions, ask yourself, if I were starting from zero today, would I choose this? If I had no history here, would I invest in this relationship, this career, this living situation? If the answer is no, then leave. Don't let what you've already invested overrule what you actually want. Fourth, calculate the real cost of staying. Yes, leaving has costs. It's complicated, uncomfortable, scary. But what's the cost of staying? Another year, 5 years, 10 years of your life spent in circumstances that don't serve you. Days of your one precious life wasted on situations that drain you. Is that cost acceptable to you? Usually, when you really calculate it, the cost of staying is far higher than the cost of leaving. Fifth, give yourself permission to change your mind. You made a choice years ago, decades ago. It was the right choice at the time with the information and options you had. But circumstances change. You change. What was right then is not necessarily right now. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to choose differently. You're allowed to leave situations that no longer serve you, even if they once did. even if you invested heavily in them. This is hard. It goes against everything you were taught. It requires admitting that the investment didn't pay off the way you hoped. It requires disappointing people who benefited from your staying. It requires courage to walk away from the known, even when the known is miserable, into the unknown. But you can do hard things. You've been doing hard things your entire life. Staying in situations that harm you is hard. Leaving is also hard, but leaving leads to freedom. Staying leads nowhere. Choose the hard that leads somewhere. Here's what I want you to understand. Your past does not own your future. What you've already invested does not dictate what you must continue to invest. You are not trapped by your history. You can leave. You can start over. You can choose differently. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, people will have opinions. Yes, there will be logistics to figure out. But all of that is manageable. What's not manageable is spending the rest of your life in situations that kill your spirit because you're too afraid to admit the investment didn't work out. You deserve better than that. Stop protecting your past at the expense of your future. Stop letting sunk costs trap you. Walk away from what doesn't serve you. Build a life that actually makes you happy. You have time. Not infinite time, but time. Use it wisely. Use it for yourself. Start today. Look at your life. Identify the situations you're staying in solely because you've already invested so much, and then make a plan to leave. You don't have to do it all at once, but start. Take one step toward the exit, and then another and another, until you're free, because you deserve to be free. And freedom is waiting for you. You just have to be brave enough to walk toward it. Behavior 6. Waiting for permission to live your life. The sixth and final pattern that's keeping you trapped is perhaps the most insidious because it's the most invisible. You're waiting for permission. Permission to want what you want. Permission to pursue what calls to you. Permission to live the life you actually desire. You're waiting for someone to tell you it's okay, to validate your dreams, to approve of your choices, to give you the green light to finally, after all these years, live for yourself. And while you wait, your life passes by. This pattern is so deeply embedded that you probably don't even recognize it. You don't think of yourself as waiting for permission. You think of yourself as being responsible, sensible, considerate. You tell yourself you can't pursue your dreams, yet because of timing, responsibilities, other people's needs. There's always a reason why now isn't the right time, why you have to wait, why you can't possibly do what you want to do right now. But underneath all those reasons is the same core belief. You need permission, and you're waiting for someone, anyone, to give it to you. Let's look at how this shows up. You have dreams, desires, things you want to do, ways you want to live. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to move somewhere new. Maybe you want to pursue a creative passion. Maybe you want to start a business. Maybe you want to go back to school. Maybe you want to leave your marriage. Maybe you want to change your entire life. These desires are real. They're strong. They've been there for years, maybe decades. But you haven't acted on them. Why? Because you're waiting. Waiting for your kids to give you their blessing. Waiting for your partner to be okay with it. Waiting for your friends to understand. Waiting for society to tell you it's acceptable for a woman your age to want what you want. Waiting for permission that's never coming, because here's the brutal truth. No one is going to give you permission to live your life. No one is going to tell you it's okay to pursue your dreams. No one is going to validate your desires and encourage you to go for it. Most people, even people who love you, are invested in you, staying exactly as you are. Your stability serves them. Your predictability serves them. Your continued self-sacrifice serves them. Why would they give you permission to change? Change is uncomfortable. It disrupts the status quo. It requires them to adapt. It might mean they get less from you, so they won't encourage it. They'll discourage it. They'll find reasons why it's not a good idea, why now isn't the right time, why you should wait, why you should reconsider. And if you're waiting for their permission, you'll wait forever. Let's talk about where this pattern comes from. As a woman, you were never taught to trust your own desires. From childhood, you learned that what you wanted was less important than what others wanted from you. Your role was to serve, to support, to facilitate other people's dreams. Your own dreams were frivolous, selfish, impractical. If you dared to voice them, you were probably told to be realistic, to think of others, to not be selfish. You learned that pursuing your own desires required justification, permission, approval. You internalized the belief that you're not entitled to simply want what you want and go after it. You need external validation. You need someone to tell you it's okay. This pattern was reinforced throughout your life. In marriage, you learned to check with your partner before making decisions about your own time, money, interests. In parenthood, you learned that your children's needs superseded your desires always. In your career, you learned to wait for promotions rather than demand them, to wait for opportunities rather than create them, to wait for recognition rather than claim it. Everywhere, in every context, you learned to wait for permission. And now it's so ingrained that even when there's no external authority requiring it, even when you're theoretically free to do what you want, you still wait. You wait for a sign. You wait for the timing to be perfect. You wait for everyone to be okay with it. You wait for permission that you're actually free to give yourself. The cost of this waiting is your life. While you wait for permission, time passes. Opportunities disappear. Energy diminishes. Life moves forward whether you're actively living it or passively waiting. And one day, you'll be 80, 90 at the end, and you'll realize you spent your whole life waiting for permission to live. You'll realize that the permission you needed, you could have given yourself all along. You'll realize that no one actually had the authority to stop you. You just believed they did. Don't let that be you. Don't let your life be a story of waiting. Here's what you need to understand. You don't need permission, not from your children, not from your partner, not from your friends, not from society, not from anyone. Your life is yours. Your desires are valid. Your dreams matter. And you are the only authority you need. You can give yourself permission right now to want what you want, to pursue what calls to you, to live the life you desire. No one else's approval required. This is hard to accept because it means taking full responsibility for your life. As long as you're waiting for permission, you can blame others when you don't pursue your dreams. It's not your fault you didn't travel. Your family didn't support it. It's not your fault you didn't change careers. Your partner wasn't on board. It's not your fault you didn't leave. Your kids needed you to stay. Waiting for permission allows you to avoid accountability for your own unlived life. But giving yourself permission means acknowledging that you've always had the power to choose differently. It means recognizing that while others may have influenced you, ultimately, you're responsible for your choices, including the choice to keep waiting. This is uncomfortable, but it's also liberating, because if you're responsible for your unlived life, you're also capable of creating a lived life. If you have the power to keep waiting, you also have the power to stop waiting. Here's how to break this pattern. First, identify what you're waiting for permission to do. What do you want that you haven't allowed yourself to pursue? What dreams have you deferred? What desires have you suppressed? Make a list. Be specific. Don't censor yourself. This isn't about what's practical or realistic. It's about what you actually want. Second, identify who you're waiting for permission from. Whose approval do you think you need? Your partner, your children, your friends, society, God, yourself? Be honest. Often we project the permission-granting authority onto others when actually, the person we're waiting for permission from is ourselves. We don't believe we deserve what we want, so we look for external validation to override our own self-doubt. Third, recognize that no one can give you permission for your life. Even if someone says, "Yes, you have my blessing," it doesn't actually mean anything. They don't have authority over your choices. Their approval doesn't grant you permission because permission was never theirs to give. Your life is not theirs to approve or disapprove. It's yours. Fourth, give yourself permission. This is the crucial step. Say it out loud. I give myself permission to want what I want. I give myself permission to pursue my dreams. I give myself permission to live my life the way I choose. I give myself permission to disappoint people. I give myself permission to be selfish. I give myself permission to prioritize myself. I give myself permission to change my mind. I give myself permission to start over. I give myself permission to fail. I give myself permission to succeed. I give myself permission to live fully, right now, without waiting. Say it, mean it, embody it. You are the only permission you need. Fifth, act on the permission you've given yourself. Don't just say it, do it. Take one step toward the dream you've been deferring. Make one choice that prioritizes what you want. Do one thing you've been waiting for permission to do, and then another and another. Action is how you claim the permission you've given yourself. Talk is just talk. Action is transformation. As you start acting without waiting for permission, you will encounter resistance. People will question you. What's gotten into you? Why are you doing this now? Have you thought this through? What about your responsibilities? Aren't you being selfish? These questions are designed to make you doubt yourself, to make you stop, to make you wait again for permission you don't need. Don't engage. Don't justify. Don't explain. You don't owe anyone an explanation for living your life. Simply state, "This is what I want to do, and I'm doing it." The end. Some people will respect this. They'll step back and let you live. Others will escalate. They'll get angry. They'll accuse you of being reckless, selfish, crazy. They'll tell you you're having a crisis, that you need to slow down, think things through, consider the consequences. They're terrified of your freedom because it highlights their own lack of it. Your permission-free living threatens their story about why they can't pursue their own dreams. So they'll try to stop you, not for your sake, for theirs. Don't let them. Keep going. The resistance will be intense at first, but it will decrease. Once people realize you're serious, that you're not asking for permission or approval, that you're simply living your life, most will adjust. Some will even be inspired, but some won't. Some will be so invested in you, staying the same, that they'll withdraw, create distance, maybe even end the relationship. Let them. Anyone who can't support you living your own life doesn't belong in your life. You don't need their permission, and you don't need their presence. Here's what happens when you stop waiting for permission. You discover agency you didn't know you had. You realize you're more powerful than you believed. You find out that most of the barriers you perceived were in your mind. You learn that you can tolerate disapproval, disappointment, even abandonment, and still be okay. You become the author of your own life instead of a supporting character in everyone else's. You start living instead of waiting to live. And that's when everything changes. When you're living permission-free, you make decisions based on what you want, not on what others approve of. You pursue opportunities because they excite you, not because they're safe or expected. You take risks because the potential reward is worth it, not because you're guaranteed success. You try new things, go new places, meet new people, have new experiences. You become curious, adventurous, alive. This is what you've been waiting your whole life to feel, and it was always available to you. You just had to give yourself permission. I want to address a specific fear that often comes up here. Many women worry that living permission-free, prioritizing their desires, pursuing their dreams, is selfish, that it's irresponsible, that it's abandoning the people who need them. Let me be very clear. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. Pursuing your dreams is not selfish. Living your life is not selfish. Selfishness is demanding that others sacrifice themselves for you. That's not what you're doing. You're simply refusing to sacrifice yourself for others. That's not the same thing. You can pursue your own life and still be caring, loving, supportive. The two are not mutually exclusive. What they are is balanced. You're no longer giving everything to others and keeping nothing for yourself. You're creating reciprocity, equity, balance. That's health, not selfishness. And if the people in your life are so dependent on your total self-sacrifice that they can't function when you start living for yourself, that's their problem to solve, not yours to prevent. You've enabled their dependence by always putting yourself last. Now you're teaching them that you matter too. They may not like it, they may struggle, but they'll adapt. People are remarkably resilient when they have to be. As long as you keep rescuing them from the consequences of their dependence, they'll stay dependent. Stop rescuing, let them adapt, and live your life. Here's what I want you to take from this. You've spent 60+ years waiting for the right time, waiting for everyone to be ready, waiting for permission that was never coming, waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to want what you want and live how you want to live. The waiting is over, or it can be if you choose to end it. No one is going to give you permission. You have to give it to yourself, and you can, right now, today, this moment. You can decide that you no longer need external approval to live your life. You can decide that your desires are valid, your dreams matter, your life is yours. You can decide to stop waiting and start living, and when you do, everything changes. Not immediately, not magically, but steadily. Day by day, choice by choice, you reclaim your life. You become the person you were always meant to be. You live the life you were always meant to live. And the years you have left, however many there are, become the best years of your life, because they're finally yours. So give yourself permission. Stop waiting. Start living. The life you want is waiting for you. You just have to be brave enough to claim it. If you've made it this far, you're ready for transformation. You've seen the 6 devastating patterns that have been keeping you trapped. Apologizing for your existence, prioritizing everyone's comfort over your truth, accepting crumbs and calling it abundance, staying small to make others feel big, staying in situations because of sunk costs, and waiting for permission to live your life. These patterns aren't your fault. They're the result of decades of conditioning, of a world that taught you to diminish yourself, to serve others at your own expense, to be grateful for less than you deserve. But now you see them. You can't unsee them, and seeing them is the first step to freedom. Breaking these patterns won't be easy. You're fighting against 60+ years of programming. You're disrupting dynamics that have defined your relationships and your life. You're claiming power you were taught you don't deserve. People will resist. You'll face pushback, judgment, maybe even abandonment. There will be days when you want to go back to the old patterns because they're familiar, because they're safe, because change is terrifying. But here's what I need you to remember. The old patterns kept you small, silent, stuck. They gave you the illusion of safety at the cost of your soul. The new patterns, the ones where you own your worth, speak your truth, demand reciprocity, take up space, make decisions based on what serves you now, and give yourself permission to live fully. These patterns lead to freedom. They lead to the life you've always wanted but never allowed yourself to have. And you deserve that life. You've earned it through decades of sacrifice, endurance, and survival. Now it's time to thrive. So here's my challenge to you. Choose one pattern, just one. Maybe it's the one that resonates most deeply, or the one that seems most urgent, or the one you feel most ready to tackle. Choose one and commit to breaking it, starting today, not tomorrow, not when the time is right, not when everyone is okay with it. Today, take one action that disrupts that pattern. If you're working on apologizing, go an entire day without saying sorry, unless you've genuinely harmed someone. If you're working on speaking your truth, have one honest conversation where you say what you actually think instead of what people want to hear. If you're working on accepting crumbs, set one boundary with someone who takes you for granted. If you're working on staying small, own one accomplishment publicly. If you're working on sunk costs, take one step toward leaving a situation that doesn't serve you. If you're working on waiting for permission, do one thing you've been waiting to do, one action, today, and then tomorrow, take another action, and the next day, another. Build momentum, create new neural pathways, prove to yourself that change is possible. And as you work on one pattern, you'll find the others start to shift too, because these patterns are interconnected. They all stem from the same core belief, that you don't matter as much as everyone else, that your needs, wants, truths, and dreams are less important. As you challenge one pattern, you challenge that core belief. And as that belief weakens, all the patterns that depended on it start to crumble. This is the work of the rest of your life, not because it takes the rest of your life to complete, but because freedom is not a destination, it's a practice. Every day you choose whether to revert to the old patterns or step into the new ones. Every interaction is an opportunity to either diminish yourself or honor yourself. Every decision is a chance to either betray yourself or be true to yourself. You get to choose over and over again, and the more you choose freedom, the easier it becomes, the more natural, until one day you realize you're living a completely different life. A life where you matter, where your voice is heard, where your needs are met, where you're valued and cherished, where you're fully, authentically yourself. That life is possible. It's waiting for you. You just have to be brave enough to claim it. Before you go, I need to ask you for something. If this message resonated with you, if it opened your eyes to patterns you didn't see before, if it gave you hope that change is possible, please like this video. Liking helps this message reach more women who need to hear it. More women who are trapped in these patterns and don't know how to break free. Your like literally changes lives. And leave a comment. Tell me which pattern resonated most deeply with you. Tell me which one you're committing to break. Tell me your story, your struggles, your victories. Your comment creates community. It lets other women know they're not alone. It inspires and encourages women who are just beginning this journey, and it helps me understand what you need so I can create more content that serves you. Share this video. Send it to your friends, your sisters, your daughters, your mother. Every woman over 60 needs to hear this message, but so do younger women because these patterns start early. Sharing this video might be the catalyst that changes someone's life. Don't underestimate the power of simply passing along a message that matters. Subscribe to the Heart Code and turn on notifications. This channel exists to help you break free from the patterns that trap you, to reclaim your power, to live authentically and fully. Every video is designed to give you the tools, insights, and encouragement you need to transform your life. Don't miss them. And if you really want to support this work, if you want to help us keep creating transformational content for women who need it, support the channel with super thanks. Your financial contribution makes this work possible. It allows us to keep producing in-depth, honest, powerful content that mainstream media won't touch. It's an investment in your own transformation and in the transformation of women everywhere. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being brave enough to see the patterns and courageous enough to break them. You are not alone in this. We're all on this journey together, and together we're rewriting the story of what it means to be a woman over 60. We're refusing to be small. We're refusing to settle. We're refusing to wait. We're claiming our power, our voices, our lives. And we're doing it now, not someday, not when the time is right. Now, I'll see you in the next video. Until then, remember, you matter. Your truth matters. Your dreams matter. Your life matters. Stop waiting for permission. Give it to yourself and live fully, powerfully, freely, starting today. This is the Heart Code, and this is your time.